I don't think it's a matter of if Oregon can. It's a matter of how will Oregon do this.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Plenty coming today. What's Oregon's postseason fate going to look like? A somewhat daunting prediction there that I will react to, and the House settlement comes through. What does that mean for the Ducks? That's all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So there's just a fire hose of news to drink out of. And, I really have put a good deal of thought into how I'm going to lead every show this week with the Evan Stewart injury reaction. I don't know if I'll get there, but I was thinking about that over the weekend whilst venturing around. So the biggest question is, where does Oregon get the replaced production from? How do they do it? And I think that's the only question, is how, not whether or not they will. Does losing Evan Stewart hurt? Yes, 100%. If you'd asked me, not that you ever want to see an injury, of course, but a month ago or even a week ago before this news came out, if you had asked me, hey, if you had to, have an injury happen because it's football and such to one player in the receiver room, who would you think it would be best to have go down? Evan Stewart would have been last on the list. He would have been top of my please do not injure him list. Other guys, not that it's great, never is. But Evan Stewart would have been top of my please don't injure list. So Oregon's got to fill the void for their third leading receiver last year. Did you know that? Tez Johnson, of course, first 2 years in a row. Well, Troy Franklin was there the year before, but in reception, you get what I'm saying. Trayshawn Holden was Oregon's number 2 receiver last year. So you're now looking at a receiving corps that has to replace its 4 leading receiving targets from a year ago, yardage-wise. Because Tez Johnson was first, Trayshawn Holden was second, Evan Stewart was third, Terrence Ferguson was fourth. Now, I will discuss Kenyon Sadiq, myself, basically. For those who don't know, I will explain that later in the show, because that was a good time yesterday on Twitter. But there are so many options. I am excited. Am I excited that Evan Stewart is hurt? No, I'm bummed. Legitimately bummed. And kind of worried isn't the word, but a little bit more cautious. But there's also a level of excitement there, because the number of guys that can step up to take what Evan Stewart's production was a season ago, which was 48 catches for 613 yards and 5 touchdowns, second on the team with 5 touchdowns, third with 613 yards, second with 48 catches. So one of the top receivers. Where does that come from? I kind of think it's all over the place. And Dakorien Moore could have the opportunity of a lifetime here. And you know what? The greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL, at least the most successful one, I think the best one though, Tom Brady, benefited from an injury where he got a chance to play. Well, maybe Dakorien Moore is about to Wally Pipp the situation, is about to Drew Bledsoe the situation. And he's just going to come in and pop off. Ryan Williams last year, down at Alabama, who you may or may not have heard, played last season as a 17-year-old, which is a storyline repeated as often as Bo Nix and Tez Johnson are brothers, which if you didn't know, I might be breaking it to you for the first time. Ryan Williams last year had 48 catches for 865 yards and 8 touchdowns. Talk about the difference between Oregon's average depth of target and the Will Stein offense. There you go. Evan Stewart, 48 for 613. Ryan Williams, 48 for 865. So, Evan Stewart was definitely a home run hitter last season. So, I think there is a really good chance that Dakorien Moore has more yards this year than he otherwise would have, partially out of necessity. I think there's a strong chance this receiving core doesn't have a true alpha. Like, I don't see a 1,000-yard receiver in this Oregon receiver room. and I grade this unit only below, with the Evan Stewart loss, the defensive line. I still feel that way. The depth in the room is really good. So this question came in. Send me all your Evan Stewart questions, YouTube comments, Twitter, become a Locked On Ducks insider, all that good stuff. Dana White's burner said about 45% of catches by receivers last season were made by Evan Stewart. If he's out for the season, who's most likely to have the same level of production other than Dakorien Moore? Fair question. Because Dakorien Moore, I think, is the big flashy name, even for the number one receiver in the class of 2025. It is definitely not fair. If Ryan Williams didn't have a 1,000-yard season in a downfield shot-taking Alabama offense last year with head coach Kalen DeBoer, who we know throws the ball down the field a lot, it's definitely not fair to expect Dakorien to get there in his freshman season. I do expect him to be really good and contribute right away. But the two names that I'm going to look for the most, and then I'll throw a third at you as well, are Gary Bryant Jr. and Justice Lowe. Do not sleep on Gary Bryant. That guy is going into his 6th year of college football. He was a borderline 5-star recruit coming out of high school and has made some dynamite plays in his time as a Duck. I don't think he's the greatest return man in the world. I think Tez Johnson was much better. I think Noah Whittington was much better in that role than Gary Bryant was the year before. But don't forget what Gary Bryant is capable of. A guy who can play inside, a guy who can play outside, is as solid as they come. As explosive and dynamic and NFL capable as Evan Stewart? No, certainly not. Stewart's body type is more closely replicated by Justice Lowe, who's going into his 4th year of college football. Those are the two guys that for this coaching staff, and we know they like to rely on guys who they know, who they've played in the past, who they have, just more experience with. I think they're in line to fill Stewart's production more than guys like Malik Benson or Jurion Dickey. And I would love to see Jurion Dickey step right into the Evan Stewart void and fill it right away. We'll see. He hasn't played any significant snaps so far. We know he certainly has the talent to do so. The question with him, I think, has just been, is he healthy and is he fully up to college speed, ready to go? Malik Benson is in his 5th year of college ball, spent the first 2 years at JUCO, but one at Bama, one at Florida State. And I think all of these guys' backgrounds and skill sets and capabilities just ultimately lead to, you don't have a number one go-to guy. You just kind of spread the ball around. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Getting the ball to as many playmakers as you can, keeping the defense on their toes, I don't think there is anything wrong with that. So if you're at all worried, I don't think most people are, by the way. I was asking my Locked On Ducks insiders about that, what's your concern level now you've had a chance to think it over? Overwhelmingly, everyone, of course, bummed for Evan Stewart that he probably doesn't get to play football this year. But on the flip side, man, talent in that room is really deep. And there is a blend of experience that, might be even more ready than some of the young guys to step up into a bigger role. I'm very intrigued by Justice Lowe. Receivers in the room have sung his praises routinely over the last several years. I think stylistically, he's the most similar to Evan Stewart. I think Jurion Dickey could fit in that fold as well. But Kyler Casper was going to play a bigger role in the offense last year until he got hurt. You've got Dakorien Moore. Malik Benson has played a lot of college football. Now, Benson has, in 2 years at different Power 4 schools, not totaled 500 yards total in those 2 seasons. Does he suddenly pop off for it? He's got the traits to do it. Does he put it all together? Maybe that's the guy they rely on. Maybe they brought him in for this very purpose, that he's experienced, he's a veteran, he knows what it means to be a Power 4 wide receiver, and more than even Jurion Dickey does, or Jeremiah McLaughlin does, or Kyler Casper does. He just has more snaps. He has more games played. Maybe he's the most ready to take that next step. But I think Justice Lowe and Gary Bryant Jr. are the guys that my mind goes to as pure wide receivers. See the distinction there? Kenny Sadiq, that's tomorrow. That's tomorrow on the show and here in a moment. But Justice Lowe, Gary Bryant Jr., those are the guys I think if you're trying to find 48 catches for Evan Stewart from last season, he probably would have been closer to 60 this year. I think you can get about 40 of them from Justice Lowe and Gary Bryant Jr. at least. And then you work Dakorien into the fold, and I think you can be all right. So let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. I know you guys have a lot of thoughts on this and where the production comes from. It is a fascinating topic, and I'll definitely get to all there is this week on the show. I have a rather hilarious thing to tell you, those of you who did not see what I was tweeting about yesterday. And we've got some bold takes on Oregon's postseason that I'm reacting to. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs, finals in particular, are in full swing, one game apiece. And every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments as the series goes back to Indianapolis. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. I'm pretty sure the Pacers are in Indianapolis. We'll just say Indiana. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And if you want to bet on college football, you're able to do that. So if each week during the season, you know where Oregon's going, where Oregon scores are going to be at, you just go to FanDuel.com. You put your money right where your mouth is. And by the way, if your first $5 bet hits, you can get $200 in bonus bets. You can bet college football right now. We are 2.5 months away from real college football games that matter for the 2025 season. I can't wait for it. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, before I get to the postseason take, if you didn't see this yesterday, I got a message from one of you out there on Twitter where Google sometimes stacks things together when you just type something in and there are drop-down options and whatnot. And if you check out the header on the Locked On Ducks Twitter account, which is just at Locked On Ducks, there is a very clear reflection of what is obviously reality and what I've been hiding from you for a very long time. Like Bruce Wayne hid the fact that he was Batman from Jim Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy, which as far as I'm concerned are the only Batman movies to ever exist. I am actually Kenyon Sadiq. I am 6'4", 250 pounds, going into my third year as a tight end with the Ducks. I clock out at 22.5 miles an hour, and I'm a 21-year-old African-American. So all of these things, because Google said so, are clearly true. It's just, the internet can be the gift that keeps on giving. Obviously, I hope I don't have to explain. I'm none of those things. And so, but Google doesn't know that. So figure it out, Google. I am not, in fact, Kenyon Sadiq. Kind of wish I was. He looks like he's going to have an awesome career. But my life isn't bad, so I'm not going to complain. Anyway, the takes for me to react to continue to roll in. YouTube comments, Twitter, become an insider, all that good stuff. Here's some good ones for me to react to. These go on Spencer's scale of agreement. 1 being, I don't agree at all. Very rarely will I pull out a 0, but it has happened before. 10 being, I couldn't agree more, or I've already made that take myself. One of you sent this one in. By the way, not only does the natty drought continue, but we also lose not once but twice to the eventual national champions Penn State and Texas. Woo. Whew. So if in this postseason hypothetical, Oregon is losing to Penn State twice, that means they're reaching the Big Ten championship game. So presuming Oregon goes unbeaten in its non-conference, which it should, you're probably, with Ohio State and Penn State both expected to be great, and they're having a big game in Columbus this season, and Oregon, of course, hosting Penn State on September 27th in Happy Valley for a whiteout. It's going to be awesome. That means Oregon loses that game and the Big Ten championship game, but therefore wins every other game. So Oregon would go 11-1, but 11-2 after the Big Ten title game. They'd get a home playoff game, which I'd actually probably be able to attend. Hey, I might be up for that. and then lose to Texas in the playoff at some point. Feasible? I think that, frankly, is pretty close to this Oregon team hitting its ceiling. This sounds very crazy that you lose to Penn State once. I think they'll lose on September 27th. I don't expect Oregon to win that game. If they do, then we are so unbelievably natty, like you couldn't believe. But if they lose to Penn State there, and then in the Big Ten title game, and you can only play Texas in the playoffs, so that has to be where I presume you're putting the loss to Texas. I'm gonna put this at a 5. Like I can see it. I really, really can. I think Texas is gonna be really good this year. I think Penn State will be one of the 2 or 3 top teams to win the national championship this season. I firmly believe that. I'm going to go down that rabbit hole with James Franklin. But yeah, I'm putting this at a 5 because I don't know that I'm ready to say Oregon goes 11-1 this year because the schedule works out really favorably. But there's just a lot of new. It is hard to win 12 and then 11 regular season games. Not impossible, but exceedingly difficult in college football. Losing to Texas, that'd be a bummer because one of my close friends is a Texas fan. So yeah, I'll put that at a 5. Just right down the middle. Like I can see it, but I don't have a strong sense that it's going to happen. So, yeah, that was a good one. All right, Nick sends this one in. Losing Evan Stewart is more losing potential production than proven production. Not like if Tez, who had produced an 80-plus catch, 1,000-plus yard season, had been hurt last spring. The Ducks have a ton of potential production on the roster, so the sting is dampened. It as I mentioned earlier, it's not catastrophic. Is it bad? Yes, it is. So I'm going to go with a 4 on Spencer's scale of agreement here because Evan Stewart caught 48 balls for over 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. Let me pull up Gary Bryant Jr. stats real quick, just so I can confirm. He has never had a season with that much production. Neither has Justice Lowe. Obviously, Dakorien Moore has not. Malik Benson hasn't at the Power 4 level. He did it at the JUCO level, but that's different even than the FCS ranks. There are some guys at the JUCO level, no doubt, but yeah, this is a 4. Like, I agree the sting comes down a little when you realize he was Oregon's 3rd leading receiver, and most of us, myself included, were projecting him to be Oregon's leading receiver this year and probably have a 1,000-yard campaign. But to say that it's definitely not like losing Tez last year. And I think when Oregon played without Tez Johnson, the depth of the receiving core showed up, and Evan Stewart was a big part of that, right? So who's the Evan Stewart of this year's team? We don't know. Is the talent there? 100%. And it's why I am definitely bummed. I feel for Evan Stewart. Being hurt sucks. I'm sure we've all experienced that at some point in time, whether in, athletic careers or just personally. It sucks. It sucks. Rehabbing and being out, there's nothing good or fun about it. It does, on the other hand, make me wonder which of those guys, if you wanted to talk me into Jeremiah McClellan's about to have 500 yards instead of 100 yards this season, I'd probably believe you. I'd probably put a 7 on that. Maybe one of you should send that in. I'm just throwing it out there. Because I said maybe. I didn't definitively put a 7 on that Spencer scale of agreement take. So, yeah, I think that there is an element of, yeah, you were looking for Evan Stewart to do something he hasn't done before. I think that was far more likely. Evan Stewart having a 1,000-yard season, far more likely than anybody else on the roster doing it. Way more likely. Except for maybe Kenyon Sadiq. I don't know. Sadiq, my alter ego, is going to be that's going to be tomorrow's show. So, this question came in as well. What's the best strategy for Oregon's faraway game starting at 12 noon Eastern? Believe the only one scheduled for now is Northwestern in week 3. Does the team, 1, fly in the day before and hope to get some rest with a super early wake-up time? No. Fly in 2 days before for maximum body clock adjustment. Or 3, night flight landing early morning game day and just push through. No. Okay, 3 is out. Let me just rule 3 out. Maybe the Big Ten should only schedule 7 p.m. kickoff times, no big noon matchups when the West Coast team has to travel 2 to 3 time zones. I hear that. However, the shoe does go on the other foot where, last year Michigan played a night game at Washington. That was a late night of viewing for everybody in Ann Arbor. They're a couple hours ahead, and it kicked off. I don't remember the exact time, but it was under the lights at Husky Stadium, I'm pretty sure. So it goes both ways. It's just reality. It's why, these super mega conferences and everything never needed to come to fruition. They don't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. And I was never a fan of it. I understand the necessity for Oregon to have left the Pac-12. But yeah, this is one of the complaints that people have. The answer to your question, though, and I'm glad that Oregon doesn't have too many big noon kickoff games. I said at the time, still believe, I'd rather play Penn State in the whiteout than play them at big noon. That long of a trip, big noon, I'm telling you, the first half could give off some Rose Bowl vibes. Like, it would take a while to get things going. It's just, when you're not used to it and you haven't done it before, I'm telling you, it's strange. The answer is, if I were planning the logistics for a football team, fly Thursday night, be there all day Friday, wake up Saturday, play the game. What Oregon will probably do is just leave really early on Friday morning and go through everything then. But they might leave on Thursday. I could see them leaving on Thursday. It depends on, what the coach likes to do, what the staff likes to do, and kind of what, is ingrained in the travel traditions there. I've seen that a lot at Southern Utah. Like, they know how they're going to travel to certain trips. Certainly Oregon is not used to traveling to Northwestern, of course. But I would guess, if I were planning it, leave on Thursday, be there all day Friday so that you can be as prepared as possible physically with your body clock to tip off at 9. I don't know why I keep saying tip off. Maybe because the NBA Finals are on. I don't know. Check out FanDuel or something. I don't know. Kickoff at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Unique question there. I have a unique topic to discuss. The House settlement. Not necessarily great for Oregon. All right, so if you missed the news yesterday, or was it the day before? I don't know. The days all blur together in my head, quite frankly, this time of year and most of the year. I rarely know what day of the week it is. That is 100% accurate. You can call me on Wednesday morning, and I don't know what day. I'm either working that day or I'm golfing. Those are the only days that click in my head. Work day, golf day, or sometimes it's both. Anyway, so the House v. NCAA settlement came down. Judge Claudia Wilkin ruled that the NCAA has to pay a bunch of back payments to athletes that should have gotten money over the years but weren't allowed to because of the amateurism rule enforced by the NCAA, which the courts have routinely said, this is illegal. You can't do that. And so that's all going away. That opened the door for NIL. Now, the House settlement allows athletic departments this year, this upcoming school year, 2025-2026, rosters will get cut down and athletes will be paid $20.5 million spread across the department. Now, how it gets spread across the department depends on the school. Some might go for, a 75% to football, 15 men's basketball, 5 women's basketball, and 5% everywhere else. Some might go directly proportional to the revenue generated by each sport in relation to how much money the athletic department wants to give to its athletes. Either way, that I suspect, since it just got issued by the judge, though it hasn't directly been challenged on Title IX grounds, I bet you there will be a Title IX question in there. Because certainly that will not be an equitable distribution of funds between men's and women's sports, because football makes most of the revenue. Does that mean the money should automatically go straight to football? That argument can certainly be made. So I'm waiting to see that. I don't have as big of a question there. I think having a salary cap overall, if I take off my Oregon hat for a moment, it is good for the sport of college football. To make things closer to a level playing field, it will never be perfectly level. It will not. College sports will never get to that particular point. And I don't think that it should, because schools that are able to raise more money and are willing to spend that money should be rewarded. What you don't want to have is a situation like you have in Major League Baseball, where all the teams are in the same league, sure, but the Dodgers' payroll is over $300 million a year, and there are teams that are not even paying $100 million a year for their roster. Moneyball is a great movie, but it doesn't represent a viable long-term successful plan to operate a league where money is changing hands like that. The NFL is a much better situation where there is a salary cap and you can spend into the luxury tax to go, over that cap. I don't know exactly how all the rules work, but you can do that, but it is much, much closer from one school to the next than it is in college sports or in Major League Baseball. So, and the NBA, I think, has the luxury tax as well. But the interesting thing that I think for Oregon could be more of a downside than an upside, but again, for college football is good, is the NIL collective angle. So any NIL deal, there's going to be a new college sports commission, and they're calling this NIL Go, where Deloitte, one of the big four accounting firms, has been contracted to evaluate all deals between student athletes and third-party NIL collectives, not payments that are coming from the athletic department, which are now legal via the House v. NCAA settlement, but Division Street, Oregon's NIL collective, would not be able to just go out and say, we're going to pay whatever we want for, let's just say hypothetically, I'm speaking purely hypothetically, I'm not reporting anything, but let's say Derek Harmon cost $1 million last year. That's obviously well over $600. And so if Oregon's NIL collective, which won't go away, but it'll just have to go through this review process, if they want to go and say, we're going to pay Derek Harmon $1 million to come play for Oregon this year, Deloitte might come back and say, no, that we don't deem that to be fair market value. You can't give him that much money. And so the idea behind that is to cut down on the number of pay-for-play opportunities or to eliminate them. And I don't know that you can ever get to that particular point, but the idea, again, is to close the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And Oregon has certainly been a have in the NIL and portal world. And so if that holds up legally, that's a big-time game changer for roster construction, because now, the bidding wars that people hate so much are going to exist, but at a smaller level, because Deloitte will be able to say, yeah, okay, you're offering to pay $3 million for a corner. Yeah, a corner is not worth $3 million. How they're getting that valuation, I'm not entirely sure. But for any prospects out there Oregon's gotten because they had more NIL, now they're going to have to go make a more holistic pitch. Now, do I think that Oregon has been exclusively recruiting well because of NIL? Absolutely, positively not. No. And one thing that I have said repeatedly is that across all the changes to the landscape of college athletics, Oregon has adapted correctly and thrived. That has continuously been true. When it was, how do you get Oregon on the national stage? Let's wear fancy uniforms, and everybody's talking about, yeah, that worked pretty well. Then there was a facilities race, and Oregon was right there. And Oregon continued with the uniform game. And NIL came about, and Oregon was ready to be a Tier 1 school. And the portal came about, and Oregon crushes it. And Oregon needed to up their recruiting, and they did that. All these changes over the years. Oregon has continuously adapted and succeeded. So while you can certainly make the argument that top-tier NIL schools like Oregon, Ohio State, SMU has an incredibly well-funded collective, USC has been falling into this category recently. While you can certainly argue that those schools are going to have to do things differently, it doesn't mean they aren't still the best position to succeed. It just means the high-end amount of dollars, again, if it holds up in court, because the courts have consistently said, yeah, you can't cap the earning potential of the student athletes just because they're playing under the banner of NCAA athletics. They are adults, and you can't do this in any other field. Why are you able to do it here? So that case still has to be made. in order to limit what the NIL collectives can do. But the attempt to get rid of pay for play and to get rid of, boosters having so much influence over the construction of college rosters could very well be on its way. It is here. Like any NIL deal struck starting now, even though NIL Go doesn't officially launch until Wednesday, June 11th, that deal that would be struck between now and that, like, let's say Dante Moore wanted to renegotiate his NIL deal right now with Division Street for whatever reason. That now has to go through NIL Go and Deloitte for their review to say, no, you can't give him that much money. But I think deals that have already been put in place get to stay grandfathered in, which is why there were so many deals that were pushed to get they were pushing to get through. By they, I mean everybody in college athletics behind the scenes. They were trying to get him through because they knew this was coming down, and suddenly there were going to be restrictions. So, is it great for Oregon? Not necessarily, because the NIL was a way for them to create an advantage over certain other schools. However, as I've stated repeatedly, Oregon is not solely an NIL recruiter. They do not have unlimited NIL, and whatever situation college sports wants to be in, Oregon's going to succeed. They didn't get Jackson Cantwell. You know why? Because Miami had a bigger NIL offer. Well, guess what? That NIL offer might not now be allowed to get up to $2.5 million for a kid who hasn't taken a snap of college football yet beyond high school. They might say, yeah, you can offer like $200,000, but you can't go to $2.5 million or anything like that. But wherever the limits are, Oregon's going to be able to reach them. So I my recruiting expectations don't change at all. But again, with the NIL collective factor, wait and see if that holds up in court, because I have serious questions about whether it will. But I thought about becoming a lawyer. I, of course, didn't. I'm doing this instead. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.